Welcome back, everyone, to our next episode of SCROTUS. We're joined again with Mr. Colin, Dr. Colin, excuse me, I should say.
Yes. Hello.
uh,
I didn't go to 8 years of evil medical school to be called Mr. Yeah.
I have to use it when we can, right? I mean,
Right.
my mother called me the other day, and I said, "Excuse me, that's not Mr. Sanchez, that's Dr. Sanchez." No,
Well,
I don't often do that.
I'm just, I always like to say, well, I'm not that kind of doctor, but when people are like, does this look infected? Yeah.
Right. Well, again, welcome to our friend Colin. We're going to jump into our case for this episode called Vidal versus Elster. This is another case surrounding the First Amendment. So the last two episodes, we talked about First Amendment freedom of speech with regards to social media and blocking people. This is also a First Amendment case dealing with trademarks. So, is it a constitutional right to be granted a trademark? And can trademark law infringe on someone's freedom of speech? These are the two main questions that this case will try to answer. I find it quite interesting, especially with the details of the case. So we'll jump right in, and if something needs clarification, as always, Colin, feel free to jump in and ask.
I will. I can do no other. I must interject. It is my nature.
It is, I know. The Lanham Act was passed in 1946, and so that's the law that governs a lot of trademark policies. The statute has a lot of rational and realistic and straightforward common sense parts of it. And one of the sections of that law states, and I'm quoting here, quote, "No trademark by which the goods of the applicant may be distinguished from the goods of others shall be refused registration on the principal register or account of its nature unless A, it consists or comprises immoral, descriptive, or scandalous matter, or matter which may disparage or falsely suggest a connection with persons, living or dead, institution, beliefs, etc. And B, if it consists of or comprises a name, portrait, or signature identifying a particular living individual except by his or her written consent." There are several other letters that come after that, but those two, the A and B there that I just listed out, are going to be important in the coming details of the case.
Okay, sounds good.
So in 2018, Steve Elster sought to trademark the phrase "Trump too small." So,
sorry.
Yes, I expected laughter.
I have one question.
Yes.
Was 2 the number 2?
I'm not sure. Every law document that I read used the word "to" as in TOO, the proper use of it. So I'm not sure what he was actually trying to trademark, but the gist of it was,
because I would have done a number 2 is what I'm trying to say. Anyhow,
the gist of it is though so he tried to trademark the phrase "Trump too small," which is a phrase that was made popular after one of the debates. Marco Rubio, I think, attacked Trump for having small hands, and that led to people talking about other anatomical parts, and yeah, we won't go there.
Appendages, yeah.
Right. So Elster wanted to basically get exclusive rights on that phrase. He wanted to print it on t-shirts, mugs, whatever, and sell it to people. And he wanted, obviously exclusive rights to the phrase. But as I just read in the Lanham Act, that's not allowable, right? So you can't use Trump's name without his permission, and I doubt he would give permission for this case. And you can't use someone's name in a disparaging way, right? You can't trademark something
as a trademark, right? Yeah.
Right. You cannot trademark something that disparages someone, again, especially without their written consent.
Question.
Yes.
If I may. What about first names that are shared by many other people in the populace? Donald, while not super common, is not like, it's not like
right
super super rare.
He could be talking about Donald Duck.
Donnie too small. I mean,
I don't know.
I'm not saying you should answer this question. It's just more of a rhetorical, like, but what
Right.
if?
Right. We'd have to ask the Patent and Trademark Office of the United
Yeah,
States. You know what? Why don't you submit an application to trademark that
I'd
phrase?
like to trademark Donnie Too Big. It's a great product. Um,
So Mr. Elster appealed the decision of the trademark office to the United States. This boggled my mind. The United States Trademark Trial and Appeal Board that actually exists. I never knew that existed. So there's a trial and appeal board just for the trademark office.
oh God.
What are we paying taxes for again?
I was just gonna say, like, what?
So he appealed the decision of the denial of the trademark to the Trademark Trial and Appeal Board, claiming it was a violation of his freedom of speech. He claimed that the actual law act, is in fact a violation of anyone's freedom of speech. He basically said the law was unconstitutional and it should be reformed or something like that. He also used, or him and his counsel, I should say, in his appeal to this board, used the term strict scrutiny. I've been dodging talking about levels of scrutiny on this podcast so far, but it is now finally here and come up that I sort of have to explain what that is. It's a weird kind of thing that courts have made up over the past 50 plus years. But in this case, strict scrutiny, I'll sort of define that. So basically, the court uses a tiered system of how to scrutinize how they will be looking at the impact of laws on people's rights. So when it comes to the government having a law that infringes on your First Amendment rights, the court uses what we call strict scrutiny, meaning it's the highest level of scrutiny. So that means they will usually side with the citizen over the government unless the government can prove a highly compelling interest as to why they can violate someone's rights. Does that kind of make sense?
Yep, makes sense to me.
So this level of strict scrutiny means the government has to prove we're violating your freedom of speech for a very, very, very good reason, right? National security reason, something of that nature. So this is what strict scrutiny is. And so Mr. Elster is saying his freedom of speech is being violated by not being allowed to get a trademark. And this law should be held to strict scrutiny in the courts, basically.
A trademark to make money.
We'll get into that. So the Board of Appeals rejected his argument and reaffirmed the trademark officer's decision not to allow the trademark on the phrase Donnie too small. Or sorry, right. Trump too small, excuse me. I was taking
Donnie too big, Donnie too large, right. And in charge. Yeah.
Elster obviously wanted to appeal again, and it went to the Court of Appeals of the Federal Circuit. That court actually sided with Elster. So that court said it is the, quote, the right to criticize public men is one of the prerogatives of American citizenship. There was no government interest in denying him the trademark. And so therefore, using strict scrutiny, he should be allowed to get the trademark. The judge writing the opinion in this case even went as far as to agree with Mr. Elster that the Lanham Act is probably actually unconstitutional. So our trademark laws, this judge is saying, are unconstitutional.
If only other judges would come to that conclusion about other laws.
Well, as
our system,
as I put out the argument on the other side, it's going to become very clear that, well, is this really a violation? So we'll get to that now. Obviously, we wouldn't be talking about this if this hadn't been appealed again and is now at the Supreme Court. So Catherine Vidal, who is the other side of this argument, she's the director of the Patent and Trademark Office of the United States. Her side is arguing that Elster's freedom of speech is actually not being infringed. So she says he has every right to use the slogan. He has every right to print the slogan on t-shirts, mugs, whatever the hell he wants. He just doesn't have a right to trademark it, right? You can sell the t-shirts. You can sell the mugs. You can use the phrase all you want. You just can't trademark it and keep others from using it as well.
Right.
So trademarking that phrase, uh, trademarking is something that has a connection to another living person, right? So putting that phrase out there, Trump too small, would have because it has his name on it, Vidal is saying, and I'm quoting here from her argument, the mark would be recognized and understood by the public as identifying the person, right? So by using someone's name, the public doesn't know that Trump didn't okay this, right?
Right.
They don't know that Trump's not selling these shirts or whatever. So it's intrinsically linked to the person named in the slogan. Furthermore, she also contends that even if we're assuming that some right is being violated, like the freedom of speech, the government does actually have an interest in keeping this law, the Landum Act, to protect rights of other citizens, right? And anything with a trademark can be explicitly associated with the US government, she claims. So basically, by the government allowing something to have a trademark, then that brands it as semi-government speech, if that makes sense. That's her argument.
By that definition, think of how much government speech we have in our culture.
True. I don't necessarily buy that argument. I prefer her first argument.
It's a weird standard to set. I'm not a legal expert, but I could see how that sets a weird precedent.
Yeah.
Potentially. Anything that's copyrighted, if I completely misunderstood this, I mean, I know I'm a chud, but like anything that's copyrighted could technically be, in her mind, construed as government speech.
Well, is copyright the same as trademark?
Okay. Well, see, I'm not an expert.
I don't think it actually is.
So anything the government okays is somehow sort of a passive yes or a tacit yes. It's like if Starbucks has or Amazon has a right to sell their products under their name, does that mean the government says yes to them?
That
It's a
seems to be the
weird
argument she's
thing.
making. I know. The last part of her argument says, in passing the Landum Act, Congress, quote, reasonably drew a line at the efforts to assert an exclusive right in an unconsenting person's name. So in writing the Landum Act saying you can't invoke someone's name in a trademark without their consent, this was Congress basically saying, well, no, you can't trademark something without someone's consent because that's violating their rights, right? So we have a case of conflicting rights. Whose right is bigger than whose, right?
I'll show you my right if you show me yours.
That sounded wrong, but you understand what I'm saying.
Mine is too large. It's the largest right, the biggest right. His is very small.
And one of the reasons I disagree with Elster, because he pushes back and his argument is he's claiming viewpoint discrimination.
What is that? Please define that for a normie such as myself. What is that? That's a new kind of discrimination. I can't keep track of them. Viewpoint?
Yeah, so he's saying the person, the trademark officer who denied my request for trademark just didn't like that I said Trump too small, and he's discriminating against my politics and my partisanship.
I know that this is like probably 90% of the law, but is this not meta comment time? Is this not the most petty shit you've ever heard in your life?
It's pretty petty. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
sorry, serious law time again, but it's just what?
Mr. Elster also says that the Landum Act allows a trademark officer to assess the content of a proposed trademark and judge it accordingly. So that's his argument about viewpoint discrimination. This actually, quote, and I'm using his attorney's actual words here, imposes a burden of on the content of the speech. He further disagrees that trademarks are signs of government-sanctioned speech. Rather, they're simply a legal protection of someone else infringing on selected private speech.
Well, that I agree with.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, I was about to say
that's very normal. That's like prudent. Like, yeah, that, yeah.
So Miss Vidal's argument that the government is getting a stamp to anything that's trademarked and saying that this is officially government speech. We didn't quite like that, and he's pushing back, I think, kind of correctly on that. But yeah, so that's basically the two arguments. So he's saying he's having, number one, viewpoint discrimination, and number two, a trademark, being granted a trademark is a constitutional right. Basically, yeah, earning money off of a political stance should be a constitutional right. He's saying. I don't know if I agree with that.
Is that a right? Well, I keep saying this, and I listened to our previous episode. I'm like, I say this too often, but maybe you can't say it often enough. I think I gained a lot from my time as a libertarian, and one of those things I gained is this notion of rights as a negative thing. I have a right to not be murdered. I have a right to not have my stuff stolen. Do I have a right to make money off of a political slogan? I really wonder.
Right.
A right to that.
I think it's the Landum Act, as I read it, right? It's very prudential. It's very rational to say you can't use someone's name without their consent in a trademark.
That makes sense.
We're not saying you can't use it in your common speech. We're not saying you can't print it on a t-shirt, but you just can't trademark it and stop other people from using it as well.
You can make money off of public domain things. Happens all the time. Right. And this is sort of maybe a crazy 90-degree turn, but this is my realm. It's like, I like books a lot. So I think about books, right? Like anytime a public domain book is reprinted by someone, the Penguin edition. Now, sometimes they'll, maybe copyright like the introduction by so-and-so author or this particular translation. Fine. But like the source text is in the public domain. So you're like, okay, it's like Dracula public domain, right? And we're going to print Dracula. You can still make money off of printing Dracula. Great novel, by the way. One of my all-time favorites. It's in the public domain. You can print copies of that, physical copies that people can and will buy. Great novel. Best vampire story. One of the best, at least, of all time. And people buy it. You're buying something in the public domain. You could get that online for free. Yeah, but I like the book, right? I like this edition. Right. This cover is cool. It's got blood dripping down the cover and cool shit like that. It's got fangs, whatever you want, right? Like the other day I bought a really cool Technicolor edition of Dracula. Do I own other editions of Dracula? Yes. Is that in the public domain? Yes. Did I still pay money for it and somebody made money off of it? Yes, because it was rebranded in a different way.
Right.
It's still public domain. You see my point here, right? Like, It's not like you can't make money off of things that are not. It's weird. The whole thing. I understand that that's maybe apples and oranges, but I mean, is he well? So, and I'm ignorant about this. Was he trying to make merch? Was that the?
Yes.
Okay, so it's similar to books in the sense that it's physical goods that are sold, right?
Right. He's just upset that he's not allowed to be the sole person to make money off of this stupid slogan that he thinks he made up.
It's not even that great of a slogan.
No, it's not. And I think that's what it boils down to. He's just angry that he can't make his coin and he has to actually go do something else to live in Biden's economy.
Hey, reap what you sow, man.
So I'm hoping this case comes out exactly as we expect it to. And because from what I read, it sounds like the justices, even the liberal justices, were going, but your freedom of speech wasn't actually infringed because you can still say these things.
Mitch,
you just can't make a lot of money, or you can't make as much money off of it.
I'm going to personal point of privilege. Okay. You ready?
Okay.
The struggle session has begun.
Uh-oh.
It's broadcast for all the internet to see, by the way. You keep using this word and. Okay, that's my conjunction. So every time you use it, you owe me 1 cent. And the fact that you're unwilling to pay is oppressing me because I can't make money off of what you say.
Well,
I have a right to make money off of what you say.
You'll have to sue me for it. Sorry.
Oh, dang it. I might have to get capital together and do something.
Yeah.
Oppressive capitalist, you.
So Mr. Elster can go back and find another job and stop pushing his horrible t-shirts. because he cannot trademark a stupid slogan that, again, as you pointed out, is not that clever in the first place.
Well, I actually ordered one of those shirts, and you know what? It was too small. Didn't fit.
You know what? On that note, we'll see what happens with this case. But as I said, I think it's pretty clear how it's going to come out. But we've been shocked before. But so far, case dismissed.